Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Australian Open round two catch up,
Djokovic and Sinner are tested again,
Draper digs deep to make round three.
and Raducanu sets up a showdown with Iga Swiatek.
Chris, today is the 16th of January, and we are here to catch up on round two of the Australian Open at Tennis Weekly HQ. It's been another enthralling couple of days of tennis out in Melbourne. Last year's ladies finalist Qinwen Zheng is out. Jack Draper is through in 5 sets yet again. And right now, we potentially have a big upset brewing on Margaret Court Arena.
We do. Very, very exciting. Did not see this one coming, but Medvedev was tested in his first round, and it's not getting any easier for him.
The net cam was tested in the first round.
I mean, the net cam couldn't withstand the test of Daniil Medvedev.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how that gets on because Tien, he's a big name, I think, on the ITF and Challenger circuit. Went on an incredible win streak earlier in the season. Earlier in the season. We're already early in the season. I mean, last season. So, yeah, he is, but he's a bit of an unknown quantity at this level. But let's see how he delivers. I mean, before we get into all the action across the last couple of days, we do have to address, last time we were sort of joshing with ourselves about our terrible, bold predictions. Well, it seems that Kim has suffered a similar fate.
She has. Rebecca Stromkova did not get a match point against Iga Swiatek. In fact, she did not even have a break point. She did have a game point. So she won 2 games in that one. Wasn't necessarily the bold prediction that we thought, but they're bold predictions for a reason, Joel, aren't they?
They are. Although I will say, I feel like Kim has the most to answer to, and hopefully we can hear what she has to say later on, because
she can't escape.
Yeah, she can't escape, and she will be doing the round 3 catch up. So I'm looking forward to hearing her response there. And so we've got lots and lots to talk about as we go. And we're actually going to do things a little bit differently because we're going to start with day 4, because I think arguably day 4 had more of the talking points for this round. There's been a few from today, and maybe the Medvedev upset, will it happen, won't it happen, is probably the biggest one. But let's see how that develops over the next hour or so. But let's start with day 4. Jack Draper, British number 1, Thanasi Kokkinakis. What a match this was. 5 sets. Draper coming through yet again, back-to-back longest matches of his career. He won 6-7, 6-3, 3-6, 7-5, 6-3. This was he's had some incredible victories already in his career, but this was a special victory.
It really was. I think going into the tournament, he was an unknown quantity from a fitness perspective. And then going back to back in 5-set matches like this and coming back in that match the way that he did. I mean, so impressive. And it does just show that maturity, how far he's come. But I mean, 4 hours and 35 minutes. I mean, he almost bowed out. Kokkinakis did have a chance to serve for it.
Yes.
This has happened before. I think we have seen this film before, haven't we, Joel?
I know. I mean, the longer this match went on, it just reminded me of a couple of years ago when we had that another British Aussie epic between Kokkinakis and Andy Murray. And I don't know what it is about Brits, but Kokkinakis just cannot get over the winning line, it seems, in Melbourne Park, because again here, similar to the Murray match, really, he had it on his racket, or at least he would have felt that he could close out the victory. But as you said, it just shows how mature I think Jack Draper is, and how much you said at the start of the season how much he's bulked up, how much he has got his body ready, because it's been one of those talking points, particularly over all of last season, in terms of the injuries that he's had, the time off court, whether he's actually up to the rigor. We know the talent is there, but is his body up to the test? And from what we've seen over the first 2 rounds from him, you have to say, in the harshest of environments, he has stood up and been counted.
He has, and you have to be able to do that. It's 5-set tennis at the slams, and he played well across all of those sets. I think his unforced errors to winners ratio was 65 winners, 30 unforced errors, and then it was more even for Kokkinakis. So really pulling through in those big moments and really relying on his big shot making. I think that was what was so important for him. Probably would have liked a few more first serves to help in some of those difficult points. But I mean, did Kokkinakis choke, or did Draper win it because he was serving for it and he got broken to love. And you just feel like when he has such a great serve like Kokkinakis does, when he's winning so many points behind that first serve, I mean, 75% of first serve points won for the match, and then it completely deserted him when it came to serving for it.
Yeah. I mean, particularly also in that first set, I was reading his first serve percentage. I mean, he's got very nice, smooth action on his first serve. It rarely kind of falters. So it was surprising to me when he was put in that moment. And it did feel like maybe the pressure of the moment did get the better of him, and he did hand that opportunity, I think, to Draper. There might have been other things going on as well, because we saw the physio come out on, I think, a couple of occasions for Kokkinakis, and there was actually some of the commentary was actually arguing, saying the physio shouldn't really have been coming out as much as it did, because that's not necessarily like an injury, for example. But again, I just think it shows that Draper's conditioning over 5 sets was one of the things that I think helped him pull out the victory, because, as I say, kind of Kokkinakis was, after that moment, he was like looking at his shoulder. Yes, he was able to kind of continue, but Draper ended up stronger in the end.
And I mean, if he can recover, and that's obviously a big if, he will be playing against another Australian, a less well-known Australian. I believe it's Vukic that he play in the next round. Surely he's hoping he can get that one done in straight sets and give himself a chance in some of the later rounds if he gets to play against the likes of Carlos Alcaraz, potentially, or whoever he may be facing in the later rounds.
It does feel like we're on, hopefully, for Draper Alcaraz in round 4. But Vukic, very good competitor. I think he also came through in 5 sets. I feel like that's probably the one thing that Draper will be most kind of happy about. But I mean, another Brit who is doing well, Jacob Fearnley, also through in 4 sets. Now, he defeated Arthur Cazot of France. I was actually thinking this was going to be straight sets, easy street, and I was a little bit nervous at one stage. But yeah, Fearnley getting the job done through to the 3rd round. So yeah, the British boys are doing well. Coach Murray, of course, still there, but a bit of a surprise package from Fearnley.
First time he's made a slam 3rd round outside of the UK, so that's a big thing for him. It's one of the first slams he has actually played when it hasn't been on home soil, so hugely impressive. And I always think that backing up a big win is actually very difficult. So whoever you're playing, when the focus was on you in that big moment, it is about what you do in your next round. It doesn't end with one big victory. The tournament's still going and he's still in it.
Do you think Jacob Fearnley, arguably at the moment, is the British number 2?
That's a big question. I think in terms of the tennis,
I'm here to ask the big questions, because Norrie's not playing well. Evans, I saw, was in a challenger and dropped out of it.
I would say I would pick him for the Davis Cup.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think he has shown a level that would make him a tough opponent for anybody. And Draper and Fearnley as your 1 and 2. Very, very dangerous double act there.
Yeah, and I mean, just talking about all the other Brits going on, Jodie Burrage gave a good account of herself against Coco Gauff. I mean, she should have taken it to 3. She was serving for that 2nd set. It was a little bit disappointing in the end, but she did give a good account of herself, which I think, to me, is almost like one of the best outcomes if you're going to lose, because there are times when I've seen Jodie Burrage step on the court that there has been expectation on her and she's just not performed. I think back to when I watched her in the Billie Jean King Cup against Sweden in the copper box, and Anne Kjofovon gave her moment, and it just did not happen for her. So I'm glad that she was able to come out and give a good account of herself, because I don't necessarily think that always happens.
Yeah, and she will be very pleased with, and she did say she was pleased with how she played. It was interesting to hear her take on Coco Gauff's forehand, because the last time they played was in Eastbourne, I think, a couple of years ago. And she actually said that the forehand she felt was way, way more solid. And if you look at the unforced errors, sure, there are more errors from the forehand, But I mean, obviously, Burrage would be targeting the forehand. That is the tactic against Coco. So it was interesting to get a player who has played her previously, similar sort of stages of tournaments, and she did find that Coco has improved a lot. So that says a lot about where Burrage's game is at, and having a big injury layoff and coming back. Maybe the pressure's off, and thankfully, you're not defined by your worst result. You're actually defined by your best result when it comes to tennis.
Exactly. I mean, Harriet Dart as well, losing in 3 sets to Donna Vekic again, giving a good account of herself, given her lucky loser status. So yeah, a good showing for the Brits. Just moving on, Novak Djokovic also through to the third round. Now he won again in 4 sets against relatively straightforward, you would have thought, opposition. Jaime Faria, 6-1, 6-7, 6-3, 6-2. I mean, Chris, a little bit of history has been made here because Novak Djokovic has now surpassed Roger Federer's record for the most major singles matches played. So, yeah, a little bit of history there. But again, the performance sort of lacking.
Well, it's the history that you don't necessarily always remember, because that's kind of how many matches have you played as opposed to how many have you won. And we did say you're defined by your best result just now. So I think he won't be thinking too much about that. It's always nice when you get a record. I'm sure he's quite used to getting a lot of records now. I mean, we don't want a record for the earliest exit for Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open. That's what he'll be trying to avoid. Very, very up and down, I would say. That set that he lost, sure, his opponent did raise his level, but at the same time, you have to think that Novak Djokovic is still sort of playing his way into the tournament. I'm not convinced yet, but we've seen this before, and we have seen him come out on top at the end. You were never convinced. Where are you at now?
And I'm quietly confident of an upset in the third round against Machak. I know Machak defeated Opelka in 5, and he's probably will be feeling it a little bit, but I think he can put Djokovic into some real testing situations is
that a prediction, Joel? Are you going to put pen to paper on that?
I've already put pen to paper in my collect set. I honestly think that, I still have not seen enough from Djokovic to make me think that, to be honest, that he's even like a dead cert for week 2. So yeah, we'll wait and see. I mean, I'm following up a bold prediction that didn't go anywhere with another bold prediction, and I'm maybe eating my words there. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, the biggest casualty we did have from the day was Qinwen Zheng, who lost to Laura Siegemund, the oldest player, in fact, in the women's draw. And Siegemund won in straight sets, 36 years old, 7-6, 6-3, 2 hours and 16 minutes. This was very shocking, very surprising, given, let's say, the form that Zheng has been on ever since, really, she won the gold medal at the Olympics. So where did this result come from?
Well, I felt like a lot of the demons that she had previously of the inconsistency had gone with that big victory, obviously, at the Olympics. I mean, Siegemund is a very tricky customer. Lots of different spins, very seasoned on the tour. She doesn't make it easy for you, and she doesn't give you that much when it comes to pace. So you have to generate all of your own. At times, Zheng can be a bit of a ball basher, and when you give her some variety, that is the time and is the opponent which she would probably like playing the least. But I was still very surprised by this because, the serve sort of disappeared. She had about 50% first serves in. That first set was obviously pivotal, being a tiebreak. If she had have won that, I think she would have won the match. I think it's one of those matches early in slams that you just want to get through, and then you get a chance to compete at a higher level against some of the higher level opponents in the draw. I think some things also got to her mentally. She got a warning that she really did not enjoy. I think Siegemund is kind of famous for taking too long and a lot of tactics that she plays on the court and mind games. And Zheng got called out for it rather than Siegemund in this case. And it actually kind of really sort of, rattled her, I would say. So
yeah, she was not happy with the umpire in that
the serve
set,
after that was one of the worst serves she's ever hit. And so, I mean, this happens. You can't always expect to play your best tennis every week. But I definitely thought she'd be making it to the quarterfinals for a clash with Sabalenka. So a big upset there, but I'm sure we haven't seen the last of her.
Yeah, a big result for Siegemund. I mean, it was her first win over a top 10 player since 2022. So really as I say, out of the blue and unexpected. But she is a very decent competitor on her day. I think we were just expecting the levels from Zheng to be a bit higher. So yeah, we will see how Siegmund continues. Can she back up the big win? That is always the question. Right, well, let's move on and look at a player we haven't really been speaking about. The Australian Open organisers have also almost kind of put him away off of even Rod Laver Arena onto Margaret Court. Carlos Alcaraz, he is looking very, very good, Chris. Another straight sets win, 6-love, 6-1, 6-4. And I mean, we're going to talk about Jannik Sinner in the second half. I mean, he dropped a set. He almost did a little bit of a Djokovic, who's been dropping, who's also dropped sets. But Carlos Alcaraz doesn't seem like there's any issues here.
He's looking really good and probably better than he's ever looked in Australia. This is the slam.
Is that the buzz cut?
It could be the buzz cut, out with the old, in with the new. I also think, particularly fetching green he's wearing. Maybe it's all just coming together for him. But very, very impressive, especially on serve. There's been some changes to that service motion. And I think maybe the first set, his first match, there were a few sort of, pains when you start trying something new. You might have to go one step back to go two steps forward. But in this, he had 14 aces and just 3 double faults. The numbers were great. He's hitting winners for fun. 36 unforced errors, 36 winners, 16 unforced errors. So, he's playing some of the best tennis we've seen in Australia. Normally, he exits a little bit earlier. Never made that deeper run here. So, of the top players, I'm very impressed probably by Carlos Alcaraz. But is he impressing you the most, Joel?
I think he's going through the draw so far from what I expect. I'm still waiting maybe for, I guess, a statement like performance, because I could arguably say the similar things about Zverev, who, again, no one's really talking about and has come through quite easily so far. Taylor Fritz as well.
Walk in the park for Taylor Fritz so far.
Absolute breeze in the park. So I'd say there are some players who I've been maybe a little bit more surprised by how well they have kind of maybe flown through the opening rounds, and Carlos Alcaraz certainly up there. But I definitely think there is, more to come. But if you do look at Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, I certainly think that, there are players who need to find a little bit more form, and there are others like Alcaraz, I'd say Zverev, and as I say, Fritz, maybe they'll be really happy with where they're at the moment.
Does that mean you think that potentially Carlos Alcaraz, if they do make it all the way, lots of ifs, buts, and maybes, but could Alcaraz get a win on a hard court against Jannik Sinner again at the Australian Open? Possibly,
but I will say, I feel you've got to take one match at a time, and Alcaraz Draper in round 4, that is a marquee matchup. I think a lot of people are hoping comes off, particularly with the way that they're both playing at the moment. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, one of the casualties of the men's results on day four. Sorry, Casper Ruud lost to Jakub Mensik. Mensik, phenomenal talent. Similar conversations for me personally to kind of the stuff going on with Fonseca at the moment. But Ruud is out in 4 sets, 6-2, 3-6, 6-1, 6-4 to Mensik. I mean, this was a tough matchup for Casper Ruud. And Chris, I want to ask you, I was reading since the US Open final he made, I think in 2022, his results on hard courts at Grand Slams for a player of his magnitude, they're pretty underwhelming. It's a lot of round 2. I think there's one round 4, but everything else is kind of just round 2, round 3. I mean, what is going on with Casper Ruud and hard court Grand Slams?
I think the nature of how he plays with topspin, a lot of topspin means that it does sit up to be hit. I think also on a hard court, you get less opportunities on return sometimes, especially on a quick hard court. So I think tough draws. I mean, Norrie last year, that was obviously a tough draw. Norrie was playing really well. He was coming off, a really good season. He took out Casper Ruud, and then there've been a couple of issues that he's had around fitness. So I don't think you can read too much into it, but I think obviously he's a clay court specialist who can play really well on other surfaces. He has made a final at the US Open. He has gone deep at some other slams previously. So I think you can't read too much into that. I think in terms of a draw, this was a nightmare draw because, I mean, Mensik, if you look at some of his results that he's had prior to this, he's had a really good run to the quarterfinals in Auckland, in Brisbane, another quarterfinal. He obviously did well at the next gen. He's had some great results like quarterfinals, really pushing Alex de Minaur in Vienna last year. He really has a lot of momentum. So on a hard court and with a serve like his, I mean, 22 aces, it's so hard to break him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, very, very impressed by him. Kim will keep saying this was her because the pick for the
this
the
was a bit of a
breakout star.
redemption.
Yes, exactly. But I'm very impressed by him. The draw opens up. I mean, Davidovich Fokina in the next round. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in a quarterfinal.
Yeah, I mean, he's, as I say, very, 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 very good talent. I'm actually very interested to see what he does this season because I feel like he should be rising up and up the rankings. He's such a dangerous player to anyone he faces. And as you said, faces Fokina in the next round, who took out Felix Auger-Aliassime from 2 sets down in almost 5 hours. 1:11 a.m. local time in Melbourne is when it finished. Yeah, this was just Focky doing Focky things and Felix snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Felix doing Felix things.
Felix doing Felix things as well as Focky doing
You see
Focky
these
things.
two and I just thought this is not going to be easy. You just hope that someone gets it done in straight sets. Otherwise, I mean, it could go on, well, until 1 a.m. Melbourne time. Every time you think that Felix has got something going, it doesn't quite get
happen.
there.
Yeah,
exactly. I know Kim will be disappointed by that result as well. I don't think that, Fokina's going to go particularly far. I think that Mensik will take him out. And then I think potentially that's where that side of the draw will go. I think it will be interesting to see the damage that some of the young talent can do in the draw. But it seems like that mid-generation are kind of getting a little bit surpassed at slams at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme I think we could see at the, just across the Grand Slams this season. It's definitely something that's emerged, I think, this Australian Open, even just the conversation, not necessarily just the results and performances, but, talking about Fonseca, talking about Mensik, it does feel like there's some leapfrogging potentially kind of going on. And, I think maybe before some people would have thought, old generation out, next generation in. Actually, it's not necessarily as simple as that. And it feels like at the moment, the talent level and the excitement level is higher in the generations below. I mean, one final result I want to speak about before we go to a quick break. Naomi Osaka. Now, we spoke about Osaka Garcia in the first round. Osaka Mukova in the second round, and Osaka came out with the victory 1-6, 6-1, 6-3 into the third round. And I quite like this. She called it my little revenge. So yeah, she will be feeling pretty good and pretty confident about herself after that performance.
Well, she was very motivated because of the fact that it was her favorite outfit that she's ever had. Was at the US Open, and she didn't get to wear it more times because she lost in the second round. So apparently it was all about the fact that she didn't get to wear that outfit. So that's why it was her little revenge, because it wasn't a big revenge, because she would have loved to have wear that fabulous bow outfit for many more times. But she didn't get the chance to because she went out early. So quite liked that comment, but I think we'll be talking more about Osaka in the second half.
Yeah, right. Let's take a quick break now and join us in the second half, where we'll be taking a look back on day 5 with Emma Raducanu pulling off another upset. Plus, we look ahead to the start of round 3 on day 6. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast and our Australian Open round 2 catch up. And Chris, it's our weekly feature. It's our round by round feature even of the Grand Slams talking point of the round. And as you hinted at the end of the first half, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Naomi Osaka and Emma Raducanu. Are these two players the dark horses of the ladies' draw? And more tantalizingly, can one of them go all the way, do you think?
Well, we talk about loving a big question. I'm a big fan of both of these players. So firstly, I'll say it's great to see that they are playing at a level that we know that they can play at, that they have played at before, and they're rediscovering that form because it's not easy to get back up to the top. It's not easy to rediscover the form from 3 years ago or the form pre-maternity leave. We've seen Osaka on the tour now for quite a while. We've seen Raducanu coming back from those 3 surgeries that she had for quite a while. And we've got glimpses, but they haven't put it together. So when I'm answering this question, I obviously believe they can do it because they've done it before. And I think that's something that's so important when it comes to some of these challenging moments that you can take that sort of comfort in the fact you've done it. But at the same time, I also think that you have to want to be there. And I think what's great about this is they both really want to be there. There's been such a shift in the mentality from them both. They are grinding the wins out. They're doing whatever they have to do. They're winning ugly to get there. And actually not that ugly in the case of Naomi Osaka, whose numbers have been great, hitting winners for fun, not many unforced errors. She's serving well. So I think both of them can do it. I think the nature of the draw might potentially mean that Osaka has a bit of a better shot just because of the matchups that she is facing in the next round. But in terms of who's been most impressive, I think you'd have to say Osaka, purely because of the fact that she's beaten 2 players she lost to at Slams last year, back to back. And Raducanu, we've got some question marks, but the caliber of the opponent, we haven't quite hit the heights of the players that Osaka's been beating.
I mean, let's talk about the caliber of opponents and start with Raducanu because yeah, she defeated Anisimova in round 2. Now, I get your point on caliber. I will say that Anisimova, she's been to the 4th round of the Australian Open 3 times in her career, so she's got pretty good pedigree when it comes to Melbourne. So very decent result from Raducanu. Why do you think we're seeing this from Emma particularly? Do you think she's more motivated and has realised, as I say, like I need a fresh approach given, as I say, what happened last season, the lack of matches and the lack of play time that she got, and actually she needed to take a long hard look at herself and change things up?
I'm not sure I think she can look back at some decisions she's made and think, actually, maybe that wasn't the best decision to skip this or to not play that tournament or to focus sort of my attention on Asia, then have to pull out of quite a lot of the Asian tournaments. So I think it doesn't necessarily need a long, hard look at the mirror. I think you just need to be honest with yourself about when you want to play and what you want to play for. And I think realizing that, you can't just play every now and then. And I think actually the Billie Jean King Cup results were really important to her, where she won 3 matches in straight sets. And she's actually gone on to win 2 more matches in straight sets, 5 matches in a row, straight sets wins. She's finding ways to get it done and closing out matches in straight sets, which was a bit of a problem for her before, especially after that US Open win. She was losing lots of matches, 7-5 in the third, having had chances to win in the second set of those matches. So I think that's a big change, that she's kind of more seasoned in that respect. I think also, as I said, like she said, she shouldn't be competing if she doesn't want to be there, like last year's clay season. So hopefully this season, very motivated, new fitness trainer. She's looking very fit out there and she can do some damage. I think with Osaka, the new coach, how much of a difference do you think Patrick Mouratoglou's made to the Osaka camp and the Osaka mentality?
Yeah, I do think that she is now, it's almost like a new lease of life. I feel like, she came back last season. It didn't necessarily go maybe how she planned. Maybe the expectation was too high and she thought like it's just easy to get back into the tour and start making waves. But I think the reality was the tour had moved on. It wasn't like it was when, she was on there kind of previously. And as a result of that, I think it kind of necessitated a different approach. And to bring someone on like Mouratoglou, who's been there, done that with, the creme de la creme really of women's tennis, I think is a very smart move. And I think they're seeing dividends from it, already. And I'd agree with you. I think with Osaka, I do think that she looks the more dangerous in terms of how far she could go at this Australian Open. I guess to me, there's one question on the fact that both her victories so far have been in 3 sets. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty, maybe a little bit of a wobble. But What do you think? Because I'm always like, is it a little bit like Madison Keys? Because Madison Keys, I'm like, oh, she's dropped a set, and I'm like, oh, she will always give you a little bit of a wobble, and I'm still waiting maybe for Osaka to show me no wobble, just coming through and winning emphatically with talent from start to end.
I think that's a really, really good point. But I would say, as the opponent she's played are very, very, very high ranked opponents and opponents who've been very high before. I mean, Mukova's made, really deep runs into slams previously, and on multiple occasions. So losing a set against someone of that level, you really can't read too much into that. I think it's just the fact it was a really tight match, but both played pretty well. And the same for the Garcia match, very high quality. I think straight sets victories at this point could actually be a bit more of a concern because you haven't tested yourself physically when it comes to that third set, especially for Raducanu, who has had physical issues previously. But I would say let's have a look at the matchups to see if that can give us a bit more of an indication as to how far we think they can go. Emma faces a player she's played 3 times and lost 3 times in former world number 1, Iga Swiatek. That's going to be a very interesting match. Probably the night session, you'd think, about St. Arthur Ashe on Rod Laver. Who is going to win that one? Will she have chances? And what does she have to do to get a win? And what does Iga have to do to shut down Emma?
Good question. And I actually think Emma Raducanu's got a shot here. I don't, these matches that, are in the head-to-head against Swiatek for Raducanu, that they came at times, I think, where Swiatek's level was higher, and also came on court surfaces, 2 of them in Stuttgart on clay, where there is a little bit of a difference. However, having said that, the way that Raducanu has come in, and has come in as the underdog, I think, in both her first round and her second round. Alexandrova, the seeded player, Anisimova, the higher ranked player, and she's just gone at them. No fear. I'm just going to do what I can do. And I just love that approach.
The swag, right? She's got a real sense that she's got that stride back.
That challenger swag. And I think if she can replicate that, I think we could be in for a very intriguing matchup. I guess I think also what might help is the fact that this will get put on, I'm anticipating, on a bigger court. Could be put even on, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets put on, Rod Laver Arena. And I do think that Raducanu elevates her game even more in those big match occasions. And I think, I feel like I need to stop short of saying this. I've got this on upset alert, but certainly I think Raducanu can cause Swiatek quite a few problems.
I think a lot of our listeners will maybe rolling their eyes when I say this, but I've got it on upset alert. I'm a big Raducanu.
Okay.
I think it will go 3 sets, and I think Raducanu will have a real chance. I think we could get Iga in a bit of trouble, but again, it could be like the Osaka match from the French Open. She's so good under those really intense moments of pressure. And for Osaka, she plays against another mum on the tour, Bencic, who's just returned. Hasn't necessarily had that many matches back. She has taken out Ostapenko, and then she's also taken out an unseeded player in straight sets. So she's in great form, hasn't lost a set yet. Their head-to-head is in Bencic's favour, but what are you going to call here? I'm going to say that I think Osaka's going to come through this in straight sets. I think this will be her first straight sets victory. She's got a lot of firepower, and I'm not sure that necessarily Bencic has faced that yet in her comeback.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Osaka, but Bencic is playing well. I know she's unseeded and she's just coming back or whatever, but I do think she's a very tough competitor on her day. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. I'm very, very intrigued though. 2 players who are definitely going through the draw and making some noise. Let's see if those noises get even bigger as the tournament unfolds. I mean, let's look at some of the other results from today, from day 5. Because, I was saying at the start of this episode, not that many big upsets, I would say. We had Hurkacz and Tiafoe both lose. So from a seeded point of view, and as I said, Daniil Medvedev was 2 sets down at the start of this episode to learn at Tien.
They're in a tie break in that third set.
5-all. Okay.
Yes, it's very, very tight.
Well, okay. I'm gonna stall by talking about Jannik Sinner because, as I say, Jannik Sinner came through in 4 sets against an Australian wildcard who has the most magnificent surname, I think, School Kate.
Stunning. We love that. Very, very wonderful name. We hope to see more of that name on the tour, but we won't see more of him in the Australian Open.
Well, this was the first set dropped by Jannik Sinner since October 2nd against Thomas Etcheverry.
Oh, wow.
Which is, well, a long, long time ago. But yeah, I was still a little bit surprised that Jannik Sinner dropped that first set, doing Novak Djokovic things at the Australian Open.
Very unusual for him. He did lose a set, I think, against Mackenzie McDonald at the US Open, which obviously would have been prior to October. So he has lost a couple of sets early on. I think that was in the first round, lost the first set of that tournament, and then went on to win it. So I'm not reading too much into it, especially when someone is from a home nation. You can get an inspired performance where you're just playing at a level you've never played at before. I don't think Sinner was particularly bad, but he wasn't playing the level that he should have been to shut that one down. But then he did refine that level and he kind of steamrolled the rest of it. So I think that's probably more positive than if you were to lose the third set or the second set like Djokovic did. Having said that, very unusual for him to do something like this. He normally just goes through the gears from the off, but instead he had to kind of push on as the match went.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's been some other sort of interesting results like this. And obviously we're talking about that Medvedev match. What is it about these players, these wild cards, these very lowly ranked players that think they've got a great shot against some of probably the best of the game and the best we've ever seen in the game? Is there something in the water in Australia?
I do think like the challenger circuit is unappreciated, and there's no substitute, I think, for winning matches and building momentum, regardless of who your opponent is. That is going to breed confidence in you. And, some of these players, particularly like Tien on the court at the moment against Medvedev, he has kind of been plying his trade, getting his experience, learning on the ITF and challenger circuit, building up kind of these long win streaks. As I said earlier last season, Tien went on a 25-match win streak, was winning lots of matches in 3 sets. And I do think that gives them that confidence that when they do step it up, it's not like, first day at school, I'm just sort of minding my own business. I think they come in already with a little bit of a swagger and a confidence and a bit of an unknown factor, because I always wonder, with these sorts of players, like how much do they know about them? Because you don't necessarily see them that much on the tour proper. They're sort of bubbling under the surface, and it almost can kind of spring a surprise on them.
Really can, and there's just been a match point that's happened, so Joel, we're going to have to stall slightly more. But I would just say, I mean, do you think that the fact that, and this is obviously a wonderful blessing, that Medvedev has now become a father for the second time, but there was a lot of people who were saying, where on earth is Medvedev during that start of the season? Because there were no warm-up tournaments, and he arrived at the Australian Open very late. So do we think maybe he put his family first and didn't prioritise the Australian Open at this point? Maybe not as sharp as he would like to be, and actually not too bothered if this isn't the slam that works in his favour, because there are some things that are more important in life, and potentially prioritising his family actually came above the AO this year.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility as well. We'll have to see, because he could be the highest seed that goes out. And we normally associate Medvedev with, as I say, some of his strongest performances at Grand Slams have been on hard courts. So it's almost a bit of a shame, I think, really, that, with this, that, he...
Well, we can see. It might not be too much of a shame. This could be the match that turns it around for him. But for some players, they haven't been able to turn it around. That wonderful story of Fonseca going
on a
run.
Hype has gone.
Everyone's saying big 3, all of this, and then out in the next round. Sonego, yeah.
I would have thought. I mean, I will say, we've got to remember, reality check, Fonseca is 18 years old.
First year on the professional tour.
First year on the tour. Sonego has lots and lots of experience. And also, again, one of your points earlier, maybe where Zheng came a cropper, the variation that I think Sonego can bring to a court for someone as young as Fonseca, who hasn't really necessarily had all the experience, all the different sorts of players you can come up against on the tour, I think maybe that variation was really tricky at times for him to kind of get a handle on.
Yeah, and also the fact that he is quite patchy, Sonego as well, whereas Rublev is pretty consistent in terms of his ball striking, the speed he gives you. It is a very different sort of matchup, but I'm sure we'll see big things from him in the future.
Yes.
And I also wanted to say something. I know that you're a big Danielle Collins fan. I'm not sure if you saw this. She's just won out on an outside court where she was playing against an Australian player. And she really took on the crowd. She went for it. And at the end, she actually invited them.
That's surprising.
No, it is surprising, isn't it? She invited them to kiss her behind after winning. And afterwards, she said, it was the fire she needed up her ass, she said.
Oh, wow.
And it motivated her to get that bigger paycheck. So what do you think about Danielle Collins sticking it to Australia? How will that go down ahead of her next match?
Yeah, I read some comments being like, Danielle Collins, well done. You've just like made the whole crowd pro Madison Keys in that next matchup. I do, though, think secretly that is a match made in heaven. I mean, Collins loves these adverse environments. And we've seen across this tournament, particularly with the Aussie matches, the Kyrgios Fearnley, Kokkinakis, Draper got booed when he came onto the court. Like, this is at times it's not necessarily the friendly slam all the time, and I think
happy slam, is what it's called.
Sorry, the
isn't
happy
it?
slam.
I'm
it's
not
not
sure.
necessarily all the time, particularly when the Australians come out. But I do think that does get Collins up and motivated, and I am very excited for Collins Keys next round. I would not want to be a tennis ball in that match.
I wouldn't either, and I do think that's a good point around the crowd, because did it help Collins, and also did it put more pressure on Kokkinakis, that support as well? So it might be at the detriment of some of the favourites. But we have a great lineup for tomorrow, and Medvedev has survived a match.
He survived.
Point.
Okay, right. The Medvedev conversation is on hold. We're going to maybe have to come back to that in our next episode. But yeah, let's look at day 6 and what is to come. On the show courts, we have Sabalenka Thorsen. Oh, that is a very tasty opening match on Rod Laver. Burrage Alcaraz. Alcaraz finally getting on to Rod Laver for his round 3 match. Djokovic, Machak, and Danilovic, Pegula. Schneider, Vekic, Fearnley, Zverev, Gauff, Fernandez, Draper, Vukic, last on Margaret Court Arena, and then on John Cain, Pavlyuchenkova, Siegmund, Caballes, Bainia against Tommy Paul, Naomi Osaka, Belinda Bencic, and then an all-French clash, Humbert versus Arthur Fils. I mean, where are you looking in terms of those matchups? There are also some other matchups on the outside called Badosa, Kostic, Frech, Andreeva, Mensik, Fokina, Lehechka, Bonzi. That's your lot.
Right.
What are you thinking? Where are you looking?
I'm always looking at the Danes. Holger's through. Will Clara be able to actually cause some trouble to Sabalenka? Sabalenka hasn't been absolute perfection, so this will be a test. Scheduling-wise, I would have put Osaka, Bencic maybe on the night match, or Gauff, Fernandez. So I'm a bit surprised they've gone for Pegula. Yep. Obviously, they want to give people that slot, but there have been some quite questionable, scheduling things. I'm pleased to see that Alcaraz is there. My pick of the matches, well, I'm going to be tuning in for Osaka Bencic before work, maybe. See if I can catch the start of that one. But Fearnley Zverev will be interesting as well. Very much an underdog again. How will he respond?
Yeah, very true. I'm looking at Djokovic Machak. As I say, I've got Machak on.
Upset alert. Okay.
I've got him. I really think that
Kim's going to have to stick it to you next time.
Take out Djokovic. I'm going big there. And of course, Jack Draper, Vukic. How much energy do both of them have left in the tank? Because they had both big 5-set victories in the previous rounds. So, that would be an interesting one to see. But yeah, very exciting. It feels like round 3. I was just looking at the draws, but on the men and women's, they are stacked. Like, all the unseeded players feel like dangerous. Clara Dawson, unseeded. That just doesn't feel. That's not a nice round 3 matchup for Sabalenka.
Not nice at all. But I think this is what happens when you get players who don't necessarily play that well throughout the entire season. It really does mean that there's so much depth in the field, and maybe we need more than 32 seeds, Joel, at this rate.
That's an interesting one. 64 seeds.
Yeah, and the draw will be like 500.
Yeah. Right. Okay. on that thought, on that bombshell, we're going to end our round 2 catch up there. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action as we go on at the Australian Open. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review, as always, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Plus, like and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as hit that notification bell.
And also a quick reminder that our crowdfund is still open. And thank you so much to everyone who has contributed. It makes such a big difference to us, and it's such a positive way for us to start the year. So thank you so much. The link is in the description if you'd like to contribute towards that. This is also a video episode, so you're able to watch us. You also could watch us back if you would like to, if you want to capture all of our emotions as we're speaking, or if you think we're better with faces for radio, then please just do listen to us on audio platforms. But follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X, Tennis Weekly Pod. You can purchase the last of the Tennis Weekly merch for this round of merch at etsy.com/shop/tennisweeklypodcast. You can email us, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or as always, you can check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Saturday at Tennis Weekly HQ for our round 3 catch-up of the Australian Open. So I do hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, as always, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.